Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Stretch Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 9.4 jungle tier list. So if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the rest of my 9.4 content. We have the support tier list, AD carry tier list, patch notes. I've got them all linked here in this Google Doc, which you can find in the description and on the main channel page. And I'm going to try to add in mid and top as well over the next couple of days. So be sure to check all that out if you want good in-depth content rather than just 10-minute clickbait videos. This gives you the real scoop. I spend a lot of time researching these things. In this video today, I spent at least 2 hours researching and trying to find the most optimal picks and most optimal builds that I can share with you. So I put a lot of thought into it. I don't try to all caps you. I try to be as honest as I can and help you gain that elo. So if you like that type of content, please check out the rest of this stuff. Like, subscribe. It does help other people find it. Come by, check out the stream sometime between 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 2 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a wonderful community. It's a great time. We'd love to have you. Stop by and ask any questions that you'd like, or just come and chill with us. It's a good time. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. All right, so just a really quick meta overview. And I know I haven't done a jungle tier list in a while. I have been playing jungle some on stream, but not a ton, so I'm not a jungle, like challenger jungle expert. But I have done a lot of research, like I said, on this, and I do obviously encounter junglers in my games, so I do see what is effective, and I have kind of a good sense of what seems to work a lot and what doesn't seem to work a lot, I think. So one of the main things that's been changing over the last 5 or 6 patches or so has been sort of a move more towards utility and tank type of junglers. The raw power and raw carry potential of junglers has diminished a little bit over the past few patches. The nerf to jungle experience was pretty big in terms of scaling and raw carry potential for individual junglers. They've also nerfed things like Electrocute and Dark Harvest several times, and they've nerfed some of the early game junglers, particularly Camille, who was very strong and very oppressive for different reasons. So this has brought out a lot more utility junglers like Ivern, like Nunu. It's brought J4 back into the fold, Jarvan that is. So that's been one trend that's been sort of shifting and probably will continue to shift that way over the next few patches. Another thing fairly recently is the Conqueror nerf helps tank junglers. So I don't necessarily think that we're going to see, every game Shyvana and Malachi in the jungle again, but those certainly do get a little bit more press as these changes occur. But yeah, that ends up helping them out quite a bit. It doesn't nerf a lot of junglers directly because not many of them used Conquer, but it does help them out against things like, top lane Jax, Riven, Yasuo, that type of stuff. Going to take a bit of a hit after the Conqueror changes. And the Conqueror nerfs are definitely a nerf, don't mistake it, for like most champions. I talked about this a lot in my support tier list video, then in my patch notes, and in my AD carry tier at the beginning. I talked about the meta, and I think a lot of people are really getting hustled by these all-caps YouTubers videos. If you just run through the math, like I showed before, it is not as good as the previous Conqueror was on most champions. Now, they did hot nerf it as well. Pull up the patch notes here real quick. So I don't think it needed to be hot nerfed, but they did anyway, so they knocked off 1/3 of it. So even if you're watching some of these all-capsers, from a couple of days ago, it's the 23rd right now, so they did this yesterday. Keep in mind it has changed, especially for ranged champions. Now it's only 2 to 10 adaptive force per level, so it maxes out at 50 instead of 75, which is a really big deal. And then for ranged champions, it only stays up for 2 seconds. And keep in mind that a lot of interactions that people think that work with this actually do not work with this. Okay, so like Ashe's Flurry does not work with this. Graves' Buckshot does not work with this. Okay, it's almost always just the attacks trigger it, and usually things that are spell hits. So it doesn't matter how many times you hit them with the spell. You just cast an ability, it'll generate 1 stack if you hit somebody with it. On-hit effects do not count. Okay, so like turning on Draven's Axe and then hitting them with the Axe. It does do bonus damage off of the Axe itself, so the Axe does normal damage and bonus damage. That bonus damage does heal you off of things like Ravenous Hunter, but it does not give you extra stacks of Conquer, okay? Or just like infusing somebody with like a Nami E or like a Sona Q or something like that does give them extra damage that would in turn trigger Ravenous Hunter on them. Does not trigger Conquer though. Okay, so empowering yourself with on-hit effects doesn't trigger Conquer. Hitting multiple targets with spells doesn't trigger Conquer. Damage over time stuff only triggers Conquer once per 5 seconds. So they have taken away all of the cool, fun interactions for the most part. There are some champions that still work well with this. Champions that get double hits, right? So it doesn't count as an on-hit proper, but if your champion gets an extra attack out of it, it will count. So things like Shyvana's Q, things like Master Yi's double attack can trigger it, and then some champions can still trigger it up pretty quickly, right? So like Riven, for example, her Q, the damage off of the Q every time you press it does trigger it, and then her auto attack does trigger it. So you'll still see it on some champions, and some champions might, in fact, even be a little bit better with it. But for most champions who originally used Conquer, this is a strict downgrade, right? Even, you know, the true damage only getting 10% and then getting 10% healing, that's not the same. 10% true damage is way stronger than 10% healing in most scenarios on most champions, right? And now this is even giving you less AD a lot of times. So for champions, it can stack it up quickly. It could potentially trigger faster than before if you aren't actively near a wave trying to stack it up in combat, but it's going to be a lot weaker, okay? And so in most situations, I talked about it, like I said, in depth more in those videos. I don't want to rehash all of that, but just trust me, I'm not trying to BS you with all caps. I'm telling you the honest truth. It's weaker than it was before, especially after this nerf on most champions, with a few exceptions, you know, lying out there, which we'll talk about them when we get down here in the jungle tier list. But that means that tanks are going to be a little bit better on this patch. Also, you know, nerfs to Dark Harvest, Electrocute, and Ignite have hurt some early junglers who really try to be oppressive. So, like Shaco, who usually takes Ignite with his stuff, usually take Electrocute and Ignite. Some of the Dark Harvest users like Kha'Zix, you know, potentially gets hurt by this. So jungle assassins sometimes get hurt by this. Now, some of them will still be strong enough to make it through that, but they're just not going to be nearly as oppressive as they were, and I think the win rates reflect that. And then finally, the nerf to XP adds extra priority to Scuttle and Dragon. It's already hard enough to get a lot of experience now as a jungler. You got nerfed about 15% on your experience. So fighting over those limited resources like Scuttle is a huge deal, and then Dragon is a very big deal as well. They buffed it recently to where it gives you a lot more experience, and it gives you 100 gold. So it's worth as much as a large jungle camp now. It was kind of odd that it wasn't worth that much before, but now it is, as far as like selfish junglers are concerned. And then the buff is massive. Even Wind Dragon gives you over 1,000 gold in stats. I have a whole video on the channel called like How to Control Monsters. So be sure to check that out. I run down mathematically how much each of the dragons are worth and how you can protect them and how you can control them. So anything that can take things like dragons and scuttles really quickly is going to have a lot more priority just because it matters so much more, because the normal jungle is going to give you less experience over time. So those are just a few meta shifts that I think are important. Also, AD carries are back. They're very strong, so anything that can help out with AD carries later on in the game, it can buff them up in some way, it can help peel for them, it can get different kinds of items that work really well with AD carries, are going to be a little bit stronger now, because I think a lot of games will be won through AD carries more so than they have been over the last 6 patches or so. So AD carries are no longer a meme. They are coming back, and so junglers that play nice with AD carries, that can give them a good front line, that can buff them up, like I said before, are going to be a lot stronger on this patch. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. And for each one of these junglers, I did sort of study and recreate these little mini guides that I have on all of my tier lists. So if you click on it here, it'll take you to another little Google Doc, and it rates them in terms of how well they are PvE. That's player versus environment. So this could be farming. This could be controlling objectives. Both of those combined. How well does a champion farm? How well does it take Dragon and Baron? That's the best way to think of it. Dueling, how well does it fight other junglers, particularly in the early game in the jungle? So if they get invaded, can they fight back? Do they have the opportunity to fight over scuttles, or do they have to avoid the enemy jungler? That's a good rule of thumb there. Ganking, particularly in the early game. How well does the champion get around wards? How likely is it that if they get a gank, they're going to convert a kill? So some of that's going to come down to how much CC they have, how much sort of evasion they have, how much damage they have. Scaling, how well does the champion perform over time? And then reliability is how likely is it that someone can consistently perform at a high level on this champion. So part of it is how difficult is the champion to play, how hard is it to kite the camps and just to survive and have an optimal jungle route, how difficult is the decision making with them, how difficult are their skill shots, and then how well do they fit into the meta overall. So it's not only just how well do you play the champion, but how many counter picks exist out there, how well do they counter other champions that are popular in the meta, how well do they work with certain team comps or against certain team comps. That all goes into the reliability rating. Then I have recommended runes and recommended items. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. I want to start with Nunu. I think Nunu is at the top right now. I think he's actually pretty overpowered, and I have been a... Sorry, I dropped something there and pick it up. I have been a critic of Nunu in the past, but I think that there have been several shifts in the meta to him, and I think there also have been shifts, buffs to him specifically within the last 6 patches or so that have helped out. So let's take just a quick look at his history here on the wiki. Now, the biggest thing, I think they gave him extra healing on his Q sometime in the recent past, rather. Yeah, 822. So that was about 6 patches ago or so. So they increased the healing from champions from 50% to 80%. And this is one of the main things about Nunu that makes him really overpowered right now is this heal. He has so much effective health because he just can constantly spam this chomp in fights, and it heals him for a ton. It also does, like, pretty strong damage to enemy champions as well. But it's that healing that's disgusting. Especially once he gets Spirit Visage and takes Revitalize, you know, as one of his runes. He'll just sometimes chomp and gain, like, you know, 60% of his health back. So he's just a nightmare to try to kill. It gives him, and he has so much health anyways. You know, he's going to come into a lot of fights with like 2,500, 3,000 health, and if he gets off like 3 chomps, he's going to have an extra 1,500 health. So, very, very strong. And then they did a rework on him back on, or they did a lot of bug fixes to him, I guess, back on 821. And yeah, they gave him some buffs on 819 as well. So kind of near the end of last season, they did buff him up a little bit. Champion heal, AP ratio reduced. So they nerfed kind of AP Nunu a little bit here. But they did give him a little bit more healing on monsters. So anyways, he's been coming for a while. But one of the main things is just the meta is very good for him right now. Like I was just describing in sort of the meta overview a couple of minutes ago, he is a champion that plays very well with 80 carries. His passive gives 80 carries up to an additional 20% bonus attack speed, which is going to be very nice. It gives him a lot of extra bonus attack speed as well in the jungle, which is good. He has an extremely safe jungle as well. And so it's already really hard to invade and kill Nunu if you're something like a Zen or a Kha'Zix or a Camille or whatever. But now that a lot of that early game power has been taken out, people are leveling up slower than ever. You know, Ignite got nerfed, Red Smite got nerfed. A lot of these tools to take him down got nerfed, and his healing got buffed. So he basically is at full health almost at all times, and he can usually get away from you if you try to invade him. So sometimes he can outright fight you, but even if he can't, he can just like run away, and while he's running, he can do like a snowball barrage or something and get away from you. You know, he can start a biggest snowball ever and just like run away because he gets all this extra bonus movement speed. So it makes it very difficult to invade him, and he can invade you. So he can get in there and really quickly take out your camps with Consume plus Smite. Does a tremendous amount of damage, especially to single targets like blue buff, red buff, scuttle. All of that. It's just, if he's in the area, he's going to get your buff, right? So unless you kill him, you're not going to beat him in a smite fight because he does this extra, 980 true damage, up to 980 true damage, and this is what you max first. So it means you're not stealing Baron from him, you're not stealing Dragon, you're not taking your blue buff from him, you're not taking Scuttle, nothing. He gets whatever he wants if he's in the area unless you kill him. Unless it's on cooldown for some reason. So that's number one, is he's very good at fighting over scuttles, dragons, all that stuff that we just talked about is more important than ever, and he does that very well. Also, he's pretty good at ganking, surprisingly. This biggest snowball ever, they can see it on the minimap, but it moves very quickly, and it's very fast. So when he comes in out of the river, thanks, dear. Do what? Talk to you when I'm done. Okay. So biggest snowball ever is actually a pretty good ganking tool. Usually it'll force a flash. If they don't have a flash, you're probably going to hit them with it. And if you hit it, they're probably dead. Because you're going to start, it's going to knock them up for a little bit, and then you're going to slow them down with your, snowball barrage. You're eventually going to be able to root them for, that half second to 1 second. And then if you're level 6, you're going to be able to absolute zero them. So you have so many different slows in your kit and a pretty good engage with the biggest snowball ever. He's actually surprisingly strong at ganking. So he's very good at farming. He's very safe at farming in the jungle. He's going to stay full health. He's very good at scuttles, dragons, barons. He's pretty good at ganking with the biggest snowball ever. And he actually scales pretty well too, because a lot of his stuff gives bonus health, including this chomp. So base healing from champions is this amount, up to 204, but it's 8% of your bonus health. So if you have 3,000 health, that goes up to, or even 2,000 health, let's say, something a little more conservative, and that's still 364. and then you're gaining an extra 50% when you're below 50% health. So, you know, now you're healing for like 600, not including Revitalize, which is going to make it an extra 15% if you're below 40% of your health. So it's really easy to just, you know, get somewhere like a 700 heal. And, you know, it ends up after CDR and everything, ends up being on like a 5 or 6 second cooldown. So it's pretty disgusting. And it puts out decent damage too. I mean, at 2,000 health, the thing's going to do 320 base damage. So it does 320 damage and heals you for like 700, 500 to 700, you know, off of some pretty conservative items. And you basically secure every objective, and it keeps you healthy in the jungle. Like, one thing that held Nunu back a little bit in the past is you always wanted a max Q, but it didn't have any interaction with enemy champions. You could only use it on minions and monsters, like back in the day before his rework. And so there was always this tension. It's like, okay, well, do I get, you know, what used to be his E, which was like a nice, it was like Ice Ball or Snowball or something, which did like pretty good damage and slowed for a pretty good amount. It was great for a gank, but if you leveled that up, then you couldn't level up your Q. But now with this rework, it's absolutely 100% you should be leveling up the Q, and it's very good for the PvE and for the champions. So it really added a lot of extra clarity and a lot of extra power to his early game, because now he doesn't have to wait to level up 2 abilities. When he has this leveled up, he's already really powerful. And so that means he doesn't need a lot of levels. You know, some of these other champions we're going to talk to, they have, you know, 3 or 4 really good skills that you need lots of points in. Nunu is not that way. If he just has points and consume, he's good to go. So he's very strong early. If you get extra points in your Snowball Barrage, which I think is what you take second, you know, that's kind of icing on the cake, but it really doesn't matter that much. It's okay, but, you know, you're really just getting it for the stun most of the time. And biggest snowball ever, you don't really gain that much out of this either by getting extra points in this. So, you know, once again, he is very good in the early game. He does not need a lot of levels. You can share your jungle with other people if you need to. He's a very, very good team player. Has a really powerful ultimate as well, and it gave him this big shield. So, you know, this shield can be somewhere between 500 to 1,000 damage in the late game after you get a whole bunch of plus bonus health or whatever, if you end up going for like a Cinderhulk Warmogs build, which I think is very strong on him. Let's get a huge shield, which once again gives you a lot of extra effective health when combining that with your Q. Just makes him one of the hardest champions in the game to kill. Keys. Upstairs on my thing. Yeah. What is that? Oh, front. I say. So yeah, I just think that positions him really well. You know, he has a lot of farming power, a lot of just tanky and stickiness in team fights, tons of CC. It's just almost impossible to kill this guy. If you've ever played against like a good Nunu this day and age, you're not gonna kill him. And he's just a CC machine. He's a farming machine, and he actually puts out like some okay damage over time. You know, landing a bunch of these chomps and then just like auto-attacking people down with Snowball Barrage and everything makes him very, very strong. So I think that Nunu is the best right now. You're even seeing him some in pro play. Right, he got played last week, and he won 10 of his 11 games in pro as like a supporty type of jungler like that. And then when we look at solo queue, where is he? Right here. Let me pull up this. When we look at solo queue, he has almost a 56% win rate. 56% in solo queue. That includes everybody playing him that doesn't know how to play him. And he has a really low ban rate and a really low pick rate. That's insane. Like, he's extremely overpowered. He's never picked and he's never banned. Like, this is like the dream scenario to like power level. If you're a jungler right now, you need to be picking up Nunu. Usually I don't recommend, like, for top lane and stuff like that, these sort of you know, like, not hard carry tanks, but this is one exception to that because he does gank really well in the early game, and he's so tanky, and he has so much CC, and he's so good at taking objectives that I think this is an exception where you can have one of those sort of supporty type of junglers, and you can carry hard in a lot of your games. So I think Nunu's off the charts, just super, super strong. His dueling's not great early on, but once again, he doesn't even have to fight. You can just chomp him, snowball him, and run away. So it's not even that dangerous to play as Nunu. You don't have to duel him. Once you get to level 6, you actually can duel some people. If they don't have CC to knock you out of your ult, you know, if a Kha'Zix tried to jump on you or something, You just snowball him, chomp him, and ult him, and he's probably just lost like 90% of his health. So he can duel in some cases, especially some champs that don't have CC to stop his ult. But you don't even have to duel if you don't want to. Okay, so just Aftershock, Font of Life, Conditioning, Revitalize, and then Cheap Shot and Ravenous Hunter, I think are probably the best ones. This gives you even more sustain, and this gives you a lot of repeatable true damage because almost everything in your kit is going to add a slow or a stun. So I think that's really handy. Revitalize, obviously, for your Chomp is going to give you a ton of extra healing. Now, Font of Life is kind of a curious one. Some people will take Demolish, but I like Font. And the reason is you get so much health on Nunu with, you know, when you take like Cinderhulk Warmogs or Cinderhulk Spirit Visage or whatever, you're going to have over 3,000 health. So that means that Font is actually going to be ticking for quite a bit. People ask me sometimes, why don't I run Font of Life on some enchanters? And the reason is you don't have a lot of health on most enchanters, and it scales based on health. It doesn't have an AP ratio. But if you have, you know, 3,000 health, and this is maximum health, not bonus health, 3,000 health, then you're going to be healing for 35 over 2 seconds. Now, it's only 40% of that, but that's still pretty dang good, right? That's still going to be something like, I don't know, 35, like maybe 15 on hit, something like that, maybe 20, somewhere between 15 to 20 on hit healing. So that's actually pretty decent. That's a pretty good amount of lifesteal. If somebody has like 100 AD and they're attacking, you know, that's equivalent to about 15% lifesteal. And then even if they have like 200 AD, which is quite a lot, that'd still be equivalent to like, you know, 7.5%, 8% lifesteal. So that's a pretty good conversion, giving it to your whole team. Also, if you take Font of Life, and this is something that most people won't do, but it's on the table, if you wanted to do it, you could take Ardent Censer. Because then anyone that attacks somebody that you have slowed or disabled, which once again, all of your abilities are going to be a slow or a disable, will get the Ardent Censer buff. You benefit from the extra plus healing and shielding because it increases the amount of healing that you get off of your Chomp. You benefit from AP. I mean, he has decent little AP ratios. It's not insane, but he does, all of his abilities have some kind of AP ratio on him. You get the extra bonus movement speed, which is great. And of course, you get the buff. It gives you more attack speed, more on-hit damage. And it gives your AD carry, all of that stuff, and anyone else that auto-attacks as well. So I'm not saying you should rush Ardent Censer on him. You need to be tanky. You get a lot of value out of tank stats because of how much you heal. But I'm just saying, if it comes to late game, you've got enough gold for like a 4th item, and you're just kind of, you know, you've already got your Spirit Visage, you've already got your Cinderhulk and your Warmogs. You're like, man, I'm already unkillable. Can I give something else to my team? Yeah, you could get something like an Ardent Censer. Now, you could also get something like Locket if you want. But if your team is having a hard time getting through their front line, then Ardent Censer could be something to help, especially if your team doesn't have an enchanter. So, like, if you have a Thresh on your team who is going something like Redemption Locket, but he's not going to get Ardent Censer, then it may not be as beneficial to go Locket second because you're already going to have a Locket for the team fights. So maybe just getting something like a, like an Ardent Censer could be better. So, once again, extremely niche pick, but if you take Font of Life, it does give you the option of potentially doing that. Okay, so yeah, Nunu's super powerful. I think that typically going just Cinderhulk, Spirit Visage, or Deadman's, and then you can also get some utility items as you see fit in there. Knight's Vow, Locket, Ardent. So if they have like all AD and you don't need Spirit Visage, then you could just go something like Deadman's or Knight's Vow, and then get some of these other things. Or if they don't have much AD and they have much, or they have a ton of magic damage, you could get Spirit Visage, skip the Deadman's, and just go into something like Vow Locket or Vow Ardent Censer. So he has a lot of different support type of items he can get. I do think that Cinderhulk is necessary for your clear, and I really, really like Warmogs because you very easily get to that 3,000 health threshold. He has really huge base stats. And it's just a really good combo with Cinderhulk in general, and with Font of Life, and with all of his plus health that he has, his scaling on his Q. So I really, really like Cinderhulk on him. But now, if you're like getting super fed and you complete, Cinderhulk and Warmog really early, then you might have to get like 1 extra Ruby Crystal before you can convert it. But you can always turn that into Spirit Visage or Knight's Vow or something like that. So you might take 1 extra Ruby Crystal to get to that 3,000 gold threshold, but I think most of the time it's going to be worth it on him. Okay, so Nunu, amazing. Definitely consider picking him up if you want to gain a lot of free low. Karthus, still going to be very strong. He did get nerfed this patch, but he has so much utility and so much raw power. People are still picking him all the time at higher elo. He still has a pretty good win rate. you out. Now, he is banned most of the time. I'm pretty sure most people know how Karthus works so far. There's been a lot of hype about him, a lot of all caps videos and things like that over the last few patches, and for good reason. He's extremely powerful, so he clears jungle really well with lay waste. They did knock off some damage on it, but I think his clear is still pretty good. I haven't played him since the nerf, but I have a sense that it's probably still okay. It's probably still pretty strong. Particularly once you get Runic Echoes, you can use Lay Waste and Defile. I think he's just going to tear through that jungle super fast. Very good at taking blues, scuttles, dragons, barons, all of those things, kind of similar to Nunu. He doesn't have as much like guarantee you're going to steal that from the enemy no matter what. But he does take that stuff really quickly, so that's an extra perk. And then the biggest thing about him is he can just power farm forever. He never even has to show up to a lane. You just farm as much as you want, and then, oops, somebody's low, Requiem. Boom. There's your killer, there's your assist. And then when you have Presence of Mind and Ulti Hunter going, then your Requiem is going to end up being on like a, like a 90-second cooldown or less. So it's just going to feel like it's almost always up. So he just power farms about as fast as anybody in the jungle. His ganks kind of suck. He can show up and throw down a wall of pain and get a couple of ganks, but in general, you want to avoid the enemy jungler as much as you possibly can and just farm as fast as possible. And then just use your ult to get those kills and those assists in the side lane. So he's one of the easiest to play. And even if you fall behind in the early game, you still scale up like a monster. If they just don't close out the game, you will be relevant. They will have to deal with you late game. He's one of the highest scaling champions in the whole game. Once he gets these, items, you just get Sork Boots, Runic Echoes, Oblivion Orb. This gives you your double pin early on, and then go for Death Cap after that. Some people, might try to rush Death Cap. I think unless you're super rich, you still want to go for Oblivion Orb, even though it's been nerfed. The spell pin is just so insane. Just think of it, it's even better than 15% extra damage, is how you want to think of it. So that's why Oblivion Orb is so strong, and it's so cost efficient. It still only costs 1,600 gold, whereas Death Cap's going to cost 3,600. Someone yesterday, or a couple people were telling me when I was playing Veigar middle, they're like, why are you going Oblivion Orb? Why don't you go straight into Death Cap? And it's like, well, because I'm on a budget. I don't have a bazillion kills. Yes, Death Cap is very good, but that's like the Ferrari of AP items. Everybody wants it. It looks awesome, but realistically, most people are not going to be able to afford it. So it is good, but having to wait around and get rods kind of sucks. If you back and you only have 1,000 gold and you're already trying to commit to Death Cap, it just feels really, really bad. It has terrible back timings in the early to mid games. It's unlikely you're going to have that much gold. Later in the game, though, when there are more team fights, when you're getting more kills and assists off of your ult, and objectives are starting to fall a little bit faster, when you're getting more towers, then going for something like Death Cap later on can be a pretty good thing. But yeah, you just want to go Dark Harvest, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, and then just Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. And then, like I said, it's pretty simple playstyle. You just farm everything you could possibly find, put up some vision, try to avoid the enemy jungler. If they gank bot side, just run top side and take their whole jungle. So it's really all about pathing, figuring out where the enemy jungler is, and just figuring out what kind of farm you can get, and then just press R whenever a fight breaks out, and then just carry on with your farming. So he's the power farm to 500 CS win condition. Just super strong, very inevitable, it feels like, in most games, and that's why he's banned a lot, is because it's really hard to stop his game plan. Okay, Jarvan, I think, is a rising star lately. He didn't do so hot in terms of pro play last week at all. It looks like he won probably 3 and lost 15 or something. But I think that he is coming up quite a bit, and there's a few reasons for this. I believe they gave him a small quality of life buff over the last couple of patches, but most of it is Camille got nerfed out. So Camille was kind of taking away his niche, which was early game power, and then he had this guaranteed lockdown ultimate that was going to kill people, and that's exactly kind of what Camille had, right? She had a lot of early game power, but she was even better at ganking than he was in the early game, and she scaled a lot harder in terms of raw damage than he did, so she could actually serve as a split push option later on in the game. Okay, but yeah, they gave him a couple of bug fixes, and then they gave him some extra attack speed off of his Demacian standard, and I believe that doubles it doubles on him, so it gives everyone else 20%, but it also gives him 20% when he drops it. So this is a 10% attack speed increase from level 1. which is very strong on him, obviously. So that's the big thing about Jarvan is that he has pretty nice clear early on, and he just has really good like team utility. His Dragon Strike, his Q, lowers the armor for everyone on your team, so when AD carries are getting a lot more powerful, like I mentioned a little bit ago, then this helps, right? If you shred their front line, or even if you shred their back line, anyone that you hit with this, all of the AD champions on your team are going to do extra damage. When you combine this with Black Cleaver, I don't remember if they stack additively or multiplicatively. Maybe it says here. But either way, I believe it stacks multiplicatively, which is not as strong. But it's still going to be really good. So you're going to be shredding, somewhere in the neighborhood. And this is, I believe, what you'll max out first as Jarvan in the jungle. You'll be getting 26% armor shred here, and you'll be getting another 24% off of Black Cleaver. So really good combination. Really helps out, particularly against other enemy tanks, which are going to be... they're going to become a lot stronger over time. Does really high damage, too. 240 base with 120% AD, and it shreds armor. And it's only on like a 6-second cooldown. It's very, very strong. Martial Cadence. First attack on a target does 8% of their current health as bonus damage. So it gives you a little bit more burst. Remember, if you change targets, you can still trigger this on multiple targets. You just can't trigger it on the same target for a while. And then Aegis gives you a little bit of survivability. This is what you'll level up last, I believe. You might level this up second instead of Demacian Standard. I didn't look up exactly what the go-to is here, but I assume you probably level this last. But it still gives you a nice little shield that scales with your max health. So, about 100 shield or so whenever you throw it down. So it's nothing that's insane, but it's okay. And then Demacian Standard, helps you out in the jungle. As we said before, you get a permanent attack speed. Does pretty good sort of burst damage for a utility item. And it has a really long range. Target range is 800, or effect range is 700. Aura range is 600, so not super long, but it does give everyone on your team an extra amount of attack speed. So once again, combos very well together with an 80 carry. So you're shredding armor for the 80 carry, you're giving everyone attack speed for the 80 carry. And then his ultimate does pretty high damage with 150% bonus AD, and has a cooldown of 120. Very good against champions that don't have a blink to get out of this as well. So it can trap Jinx into this very easily. It can trap Ashe. It can trap Vayne. Vayne can't tumble out of this. I'm pretty sure she can't. Lucian can dash through it. Ezreal obviously can E out of it, but Twitch can't get out of it. So there's a lot of like these immobile 80 carries that are hyperscalers, Kog'Maw, that are going to be coming up a little bit over the next couple of patches. And so that makes him even better because he can get in there and tear them up. It's also very good against Olaf, which in pro play, that's definitely going to start becoming a thing, I think. In solo queue, Olaf's not amazing. He's okay. But it is one of the very few things that can peel Olaf off of your AD carry. Because it's not CC formally. It just builds that wall around him. And so, they have to flash out of it if they want to get through it. And a lot of times, Olaf won't even take flash. I think he takes ghost sometimes. I'm not sure. But he does have very good interactions against particularly immobile champions. So I have him up this high not only because he has pretty good ganks early. He does quite a bit of damage once he gets Warrior and Cleaver. Really nice spike damage. But he can also transition later into a utility tank. And he has that great, extra spice about him, right? He's got the armor shred, he's got the attack speed, he has the ultimate that can lock people down on a short cooldown. So he has a lot of stuff he can do, even if you fall behind. So you can take over if you get a lot of really good ganks, and you can just, pound them with a lot of heavy AD in your build, but you can also transition later into a pretty reasonable tank with a lot of utility, which is something that a lot of these other early game powerhouse AD champions like Kha'Zix, like Lee Sin, they have a harder time doing that later on. They just don't have as much utility as Jarvan does. So that's why I think that Jarvan is really strong right now and is going to increase in power. So Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, and then just Triumph and Alacrity. All right, and then just Ninja Tabby, go Warrior. Some of the old builds that go Cinderhulk. I think Cinderhulk is pretty garbage, though, if you're not going to get other AP items, or other HP items, rather. The scaling on it, it's just not very cost efficient at all. If we look at Warrior, Warrior is still super efficient compared to some other champs. It's got like a 90% efficiency, so I guess that's not super duper efficient. But it's pretty good, especially considering your Stalker Blade and your Skirmisher Saber are going to give you these extra debuffs, extra farming in your jungle and things like that. So it's going to be pretty good, but compared to something like Cinderhulk is cheaper, but it's only 36% efficient baseline. Then you get 2% extra efficiency for every 100 bonus health. So even if you have 1,000 bonus health, it's still only going to be like 56% efficient. And you do get the extra burn off of Immolate, which is nice, but you really don't get a lot of value out of this unless you're getting a lot of other health items. I mean, Black Cleaver does have a lot of health on it, I suppose. I just really don't think Cinderhulk is where you want to be. I think you want to try to take over the mid game with AD because he has such good AD ratios, and then dial it back later if you need to. Then go back into a more utility type of build. So I would start off with Warrior, Cleaver, and then Sterix. I don't know what the hell's going on with my hair today, but I need a haircut. But anyways, I think he's really good right now just because of that dual purpose, like the early game aggression and the utility later on. Okay, Jax is another one that I think is going to be gaining. He's already been really strong. He did get nerfed a little bit a few patches ago, but I still think he's going to be good, particularly at gold and lower. He just scales really, really hard later on into the game. I mean, there's not much more to say other than that. He has okay clear. It's not amazing, early on because he's just pretty much auto attacks. His Counter-Strike will block out a lot of the damage and does some pretty good AoE. He can have a hard time, though, I think, with things like Raptors and Golems. He's just going to clear it a lot slower than some of the other junglers. His ganking's not amazing early, but it's not terrible either. You do have the Leap Strike plus a stun. If they don't flash it, you are going to get him. But you can't really get around wards. You just have to kind of run at him. So if you're trying to gank a lane that has a lot of CC, it can be helpful, but otherwise, that aspect is kind of limited. But as he scales, once he gets his Trinity, and I do like getting the press the attack on him. Yeah, you can get Conquer, but he does trigger press the attack a lot faster. And I think you just want to come online and have that burst damage up earlier with press the attack. So you can do Conquer, but I just feel like press the attack is just going to be better, particularly against single targets. Now, Conquer can work if you're going to be team fighting a lot more, if you're going to be, jumping in, if you're like a primary tank type of thing, which is kind of an odd place to be as Jax. But if you're the one that's like trying to start off these fights and the fights are going to go a bit longer, yeah, Conquer can be pretty good too. But I still think that PTA is strong. And then you have Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then Sudden Impact and Ravenous Hunter to help heal you up. And then just go in Tabi for the extra tankiness. Blood Razor, for the same reason I was just talking about Cinderhulk in the past. Some people have gone Cinder, but because you're going Trinity, that's not going to be a lot of extra bonus health for Cinderhulk. Cinderhulk does help you out with your clear some, but I still would probably just go Blood Razor. It's going to give you higher single target damage. It's going to allow you to take dragons and barons a lot more quickly, and things like towers a lot more quickly. It's going to allow you to shred through tanks faster. So I would just go a little bit greedier, just go Blood Razor, Trinity. And then a lot of times you get one more kind of hybrid item after that. You could go for Sterix, is still kind of standard. That'll give you a lot more survivability if you need it. Shojin is kind of the greedy build. And I have been seeing more and more people do this. It gives you a ton of extra cooldown on your Leap Strike and on your Counter Strike. So that can make you surprisingly resilient with that Counter Strike. So it's going to end up being on like a, like a 3-second cooldown or less. It's almost always going to be up, and you're going to be able to jump strike to people constantly if you have Shojin. So I think that's a really, really powerful tool, particularly if you're going to be dueling other split pushers down the line. That can make you very potent. So I think Jax still going to be strong, particularly in lower elos, or people are just going to leave him alone, let him farm for a little bit. The power farm junglers did kind of get hurt a little bit. There's a big debate on this. Some people say that all that you can do is just gank in the early game because your jungle got hurt so much. But at the same time, like, you need to clear your camps as well. So the jungle camps are even more valuable because if you take them away from somebody else, it's going to starve them out of even more resources. And so I think there could be an argument for both of them. If you are converting the ganks, it's great, but then you're falling even more behind by not clearing your jungle because the jungle is worth less, if that makes sense. So it's like you're taking something that's already kind of hurting you, kind of the nerf to the jungle, and you're exacerbating that by not farming your jungle as fast by constantly ganking. And especially if you're not converting on those ganks. So He's in a good spot. He's a very good duelist later. If you're pretty comfortable that your team's going to be okay for the first, 15 to 20 minutes, he can be one of the higher scaling junglers. And the fact that he also does a ton of damage and tanks really well positions him as a potential split pusher if you want to do like a 1-3-1 comp, or if they have something pretty scary that is going to be a good split pusher. Like maybe they have a Tryndamere against your Maokai top lane and you're worried that, 30 minutes in the game, the Maokai's not going to be able to handle the Tryndamere anymore, then maybe you can, be willing to go up there and match that Tryndamere as Jax and try to take him down. So it can be very good for a 1-3-1, or if you have a team fighting tank in the top lane and you need to be able to match the enemy split pusher late game. That can be pretty decent. Split pushing with a jungler is always a little wacky because you kind of don't want to take your smite away from the Baron, but it can work. Especially if you have a team with pretty good like zone control and disengage so that they don't run for the Baron. And Jax can interrupt teleports as well with his stun. So that's a thing too, is that, the Tryndamere or somebody else might have a teleport, and if you go down there to try to fight the Tryndamere, he could teleport up to Baron and force a 4v5, but you have the opportunity to stop that as well. So can be very strong, very versatile, scales really well over time, can operate as a pseudo tank in the late game. Because the passive on your ultimate gives you a ton of extra tank stats. Or I guess that's the active on your ultimate gives you a ton of tank stats. Okay, Kha'Zix still going to be really strong. I did mention that some of these champions did get nerfed out a little bit, most notably champions like Kha'Zix that needed Dark Harvest or Electrocute. So he was number 1 a few patches ago. I still think he's going to be very strong. He does have, I think he did decently well at, pro level play, so high level play. He's doing all right. Looks like he probably won 4 out of 6 there. And then in solo queue, he's still pretty respectable. I think he's at 51%, 52%. So he's very good. He's just a very risky pick, because he can't do any. If he can't assassinate people, he's not doing anything, right? He doesn't have the option of really split pushing late game. He doesn't have much of a team fight going on. He does have very good control over Barons and Dragons, so he takes those extremely quickly. And he's very, very good at dueling. So he's probably the best duelist in the game right now, early game. I would say Zen is really good too. They nerfed out Camille, but he's definitely in the conversation for one of the best duelists. And a lot of that is because of his isolation bonuses that he gets on people, which was buffed a few patches ago, I think. Let me see. Yeah, 819. His unseen threat increased to 40% AD, bonus AD from 20%. So he got a damage spike there, and then his isolated void spike, his W, the slow, or if it's isolated, the slow actually went up, but the unevolved one, or the evolved one, no, it was just straight a buff all around. The slow went up on the W, and he got extra bonus AD. So that's when he started coming back into the meta a lot more. He had been nerfed out pretty hard when they changed his Void Assault, to where he doesn't get invisibility from going into bushes, which was really troll for the first half of last season. But then he finally got buffed up again on 819, and then of course when we had stuff like Dark Harvest in play, and there's just a ton of damage everywhere, a bunch of squishy champions that do a lot of damage, he's very good in that environment because he almost always gets the first hit on people because he can jump out invisible and potentially blow up the squishies. But now that we're starting to see some more tanks coming in, we're starting to see some more Nunus. Jarvan, who's not a tank proper, but he's pretty resilient. Jax can potentially be kind of resilient too. You're not able to prey on the Camille's and that type of stuff as much as you were before. That can create some problems. But I still think that he's going to be pretty good. He has a ton of snowball and carry potential. The invisibility is always going to be a threat in solo queue, just being able to jump over walls and just come at people from weird angles and just pick them off. Isolation, hit them for 1,500 just out of nowhere is really good. And you're pretty much taking him for that. He can just go in, invade the enemy jungler if you have priority in your lanes, beat them up, hunt them down, take all of their camps. You can fight over Scuttle. Very few people are going to contest you for that. If you do see a good opportunity to grab a dragon early, you take it extremely quickly with the isolation bonus off of Taste Their Fear. You pretty much always want to evolve this first on Kha'Zix. You get 45% of the cooldown back, so you can just spam this over and over and over again against isolated targets, so you get the extra 100% there. So the isolation damage, even in the kind of the early game, around level 5 or so, is 260% of your bonus AD in addition to 200 base. So if you have like 100 bonus AD, you know, that's going to be 460 damage on something that is on a 4-second cooldown that ends up becoming like a 2-second cooldown against isolated targets. So that just completely deletes people early on. So it's really good. And that doesn't include your basic attack. So you just normally hit them for 100, and then you hit them with this after that. So just a ton of damage. And if somebody's unseen, the first hit that you get on them is going to have this extra bonus 82. So that's another 80 plus, you know, at level 7 or something, 80 plus 62. You're easily going to be, you know, pounding people for like 800 damage almost instantly when you get on him with this. So he's one of the highest single target burst champions out there. He can go invisible and he can contest objectives really well. So I still think that Kha'Zix is going to be very good, but you have to have an aggressive mindset with him. You have to want to invade the enemy jungle, take him down, and get some really high quality ganks. So yeah, Kha'Zix still going to be very strong. Just Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, and then Ravenous Hunter, Triumph, and Coup de Grace. And then just Tabby, give you some extra dueling power. You don't really need the attack speed. And then just Warrior, Dustblade, Ghostblade. That's what I would get. Most people do Dustblade because whenever you go invisible with your ult, then it triggers Dustblade again. So you can get multiple Dustblade procs off. And then Ghostblade does give you the ability to run people down while you're invisible. Now, it's not as strong as it was because before you could use Ghostblade and like run through several bushes without ever becoming visible again and sort of cheat your way through the vision. You can't do that as much anymore, but it's still going to be pretty powerful for running people down and making sure that you're able to finish them off. Okay, and then moving down into Tier 2, some of these champions are still going to be really good in the right circumstances. I just think that most of these are either very versatile or they're extremely good, top of the class at what they do. So like Kha'Zix isn't very versatile, but I think he's the best duelist jungler out there, certainly in the conversations I said before. And the rest of these are pretty versatile, right? In terms of Jax, you know, he can split push, he can kind of duel, he can take objectives, scales like a monster. Jarvan starts aggressive early, can get utility later. Karthus, AP damage, unavoidable scaling. And then Nunu, just all-around badass. Really tanky, has a ton of CC, a ton of utility to him. Okay. Now, Rek'Sai, I think, could actually be Tier 1. I was really debating putting Rek'Sai up there instead of either Jax or Kha'Zix, or maybe even Jarvan. I think that she's going to be really, really strong on this patch, but I think that a lot of people are going to sleep on her and sort of disrespect her on this patch because they aren't quite going to understand what this buff exactly did to her. It is astronomical how much extra power this puts into Rek'Sai's kit, because look at how much damage her ult is. You know, I had someone ask me the other day, does it really even matter? Like, how much does it help that Rek'Sai, you know, got that quality of life buff to her Void Rush? It's like, well, you tell me. You know, this has 200% AD, 250 base at level 11, and you're doing 25% of your targets missing health. So if you do like at least half of their health off of your initial combo with Furious Bite, that's gaining an extra 250 damage. If you have 100 bonus AD, which is like really easy to get to, that would be 500, 700 damage on a single ability, like pretty early in the game with very modest stats. It's like, okay, before that quality of life, everyone and their mother could dodge this with a flash or a dash. Now nobody can dodge it. So, like, I don't know. Do you think 700 extra damage added to your combo, is that worthwhile? Is that a big deal? Yes. Yes, it is. It's a very, very big deal. Okay, so she is going to be one-shotting people like a beast on this patch. She is very, very strong with bonus AD right now. All you need to look at is her Furious Bite. Look at this stat line. True damage. All of it is true damage, okay? 170% bonus AD. So even if you only have 100 AD, this thing is going to do 360 true damage. That's insane. If you don't know how good true damage is, just see why they nerfed Conquer. Okay? So a good basic rule of thumb for thinking about true damage, just think of it as double damage. It's not always that, but it's pretty close to double damage. Okay? So that's like doing 720 damage, like physical damage, on, you know, just a normal ability. Like not even an ultimate. So, yeah, she's going to be very, very strong. And for those of you that have forgotten, she was a staple in pro play for quite a while. She just got nerfed into the dirt a while ago, and we haven't seen her since then. But a lot of these early game, junglers are starting to get nerfed, nerfed out, like Camille, like I said before. And she has very preferable interactions if you're good with her against champions like Lee Sin in particular, but also against things like Jarvan, because whenever they try to do their thing, when they try to connect with that Q, or whenever they try to flag and drag combo her, she can actually unburrow and knock them out of that if she's burrowed. But, like, her damage combo is insane. So if you just get under them with burrow, which, by the way, has a really long radius on it, or whatever, tunnel, 850. So basically this is like an 850, like, slightly delayed dash to get underneath people. And then her combo is she unburrows. So that's going to knock you up. It's going to do 80% of your bonus AD, physical damage. I believe this is the last thing that you'll level up. So it's not going to do a ton. It's going to do a decent amount, but you're going to be stunned for 1 second while you're knocked up. And then she's going to get to hit you with somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 3 basic attacks, each one of which is going to do an extra 725 damage. Or not 725, 25 bonus damage, 150% bonus AD. So that's 100, total damage, 150% bonus AD with 60 base. In addition to just, normally being an attack that's going to hit you for 100 or so if she has some degree of bonus AD. That's going to fully empower her bite. She's going to chomp you, which I think this is what you should be leveling up first. She's going to chomp you, for at least 360 true damage, and then she's going to ult you for an extra 800 damage. So, like, this combo here, which is very modest stats, if she gets that on you, it's probably going to do, like, somewhere between, like, 1,700 and 2,000 damage before you really have much of an ability to respond. Because when she knocks you up, if she takes Hail of Blades, which is what I think you should take on her, if she takes Hail of Blades, she's going to land 3 autos on you probably before you come down, or at least pretty close, because this is an auto attack reset. So she's going to auto, reset, auto, chomp, and then you might try to trade back onto her, but she goes untargetable, burrows in, and then gets to land this on you, unstoppable as she goes at you. So you're going to have very, very limited opportunities. Even if you kick her away as Lee Sin, she's still going to be able to Void Rush and get right back on you. Or if you do something else, you try to flash away or just anything, she's going to get you with this. So I think that she's just going to have tremendous dueling power, tremendous ganking power on people with this. I think she can even bite you, like, if you start attacking. So if she pops up, attacks you a couple of times, and then Void Rushes, you, like, kick her away or you flash away, she should be able to, I believe, Void Rush after you. And then after she lands on you with that, then she can still Furious Bite you. So even if you get away before she bites you, before she gets to that 100 Fury, I think she's still going to be able to gap close you and bite you after that. So I think she's going to do a tremendous amount of damage. I think she's going to catch a lot of people off guard. I wouldn't even be surprised to start seeing her a little bit more in pro play because of that. She has very, very good gank patterns because she can get around walls so easily and on a fairly low cooldown. So that burrow mechanic, the tunneling or whatever, is 850 range. So that means, you can come around at just weird angles behind people, get through their wards. You can go through, like, Dragon Pit, Baron Pit, over just any wall in the game, right? You just come at them from all of these weird angles, and then whenever you unburrow, they're dead. Probably. So I think that makes her very strong. She also has really good wave clear. Because of her Q, it's so spammable. It's on a really low cooldown. It does AoE damage to everyone in her surrounding area, so she can clear raptors. She can clear golems really easily. Now, I'm not sure if she can duel something like a Kha'Zix before she hits 6. That might be a little sketchy. I don't know. That bite is really good, but I'm not sure pre-6 what her dueling capability is going to be. But I do know that she's going to have really good ganks, and she's going to have really, really high burst damage once she gets to level 6. Now, a lot of people do max Queen's Wrath right now. I'm not an expert on her, but I feel like that's a mistake because you don't gain that much extra out of it, right? It's 50% bonus AD no matter how many points you put in it. So you're basically spending 5 skill points to get 20 extra physical damage per attack, which is nice, but you don't get any cooldown, and you don't get any extra bonus. So why not level up Furious Bite instead, which, gives you 40 extra damage on an all-in, which converts over to 80 extra true damage, and it helps you out with tunnels. So Prey Seeker really doesn't matter that much. I mean, you do get some extra damage off of Prey Seeker for sure. It does go to a lower cooldown, so you can throw this, you know, and poke people out with this. But getting this tunnel just feels really strong too. Like, you can create new tunnels, really, like, a lot. You can get a lot of tunnels down, but the most important thing is you can go back through a tunnel every 2 seconds when a tunnel's there. So in combat, with her all-in potential, right, what you can do is you tunnel up to somebody, unburrow, knock them up, do your thing with Q, hit them a few times, chomp them, ult them, and then after you kill that single target, you know, when everyone's going to be trying to swarm and kill you, then you can just burrow and take the tunnel right back out. It's only going to be on a 2-second cooldown before you can pop back in that tunnel. Unless somebody thinks to kill the tunnel in the middle of combat while you're doing that, which no one's going to do that. I think it gives you a ton of extra mobility, which is really important because, you know, Rek'Sai is very vulnerable when her stuff is on cooldown. And she has pretty long cooldowns on her bite specifically, which is the big damage. And so being able to go in, blow somebody up, burrow, heal for the burrowed amount off of her passive, and then pop right back through that tunnel, wait on your cooldown, and then burrow back in and go for more damage, I think is a really good trading pattern. And I think a lot of people are overlooking that. I think they're just getting this by default because it's the thing you spam the most. Kind of like Cassiopeia, where people would, you know, for years just spam E all the time, when actually Q was the best thing because it enabled, like, a better style of play. I think it could be similar with Furious Bite, where I think a lot of people are overlooking not only the bite, which does 80 extra true damage when you have it, but also that tunnel mechanic, because it lowers the tunnel time by a lot. So that really gives you a ton of extra mobility around fights. So anyways, I think she's going to be very strong right now. So we'll see. Like I said, she maybe could be tier 1. I just think that a lot of people aren't going to really test her out or try it that much. You know, I know LS was saying she was a trash champ in his patch notes, so it's not going to matter. I think people will figure it out, though, once a few pros start doing it. I think coup de grace is what you'd want. You can go Alacrity with her as well. I like the Hail of Blades build. There are some people doing Conquer, but I think it takes too long to stack it. You know, it's like, yeah, okay, so you unburrow. That gives you 1 hit. Then you auto-attack them like 3 times. Okay. And then you Furious Bite them. Okay. Well, that's most of their health right there, you know, and then you do get like the 10% true damage conversion on the ult, which is very good, but, you know, she's not someone who's built to stay in there and just sustain damage fight over and over and over again. She's a burst champion, and most of your damage is already going to be done before Conquer even comes online, and then you're going to have to wait on your cooldowns after that. So I think Halo Blades is better. I think it gives you more burst. I think it's going to allow you to stack up your Fury faster, because you're going to be able to unburrow, auto-attack, reset your auto-attack with the Q, and then auto-attack again, probably before they can get very far from you. And you should still be able to chomp them, or at least ult them and then chomp them after that. So I think the Halo Blades thing is better. And then once you pop out of combat for like 4 seconds, you take that tunnel back out, you wait on your cooldowns to come back, you know, into play a little bit more, and then you go back in, then you're ready to Halo Blades all over again. So, I think it just gives you a lot more burst damage to go Hail Blades. It also allows you to take things like Sudden Impact, Ghost Poro, Relentless Hunter, and then Triumph and Coup de Grace. That's what Meteos, I think, has been doing lately on her. So some people are trying her out. Meteos has been running with her a little bit lately, but still not that many people rolling with her. But I like this build a lot better, at least on paper. And then just Ninja Tabby, Warrior, Black Cleaver, Sterix, just your standard kind of like high AD bruiser sort of champ. So I think she can have a lot of utility, and I think she's fairly unique because she does a huge amount of burst, she has a huge amount of true damage, and she has really good ganking. So I think that makes her particularly strong. Okay, Master Yi, and then we need to go ahead and finish this up. I need to start streaming here soon. Master Yi is just a pest. I mean, he's a monster, especially if you're like gold and lower, and even into platinum. If the enemy team doesn't draft CC and the game goes to like 20 minutes and you get 2 items, it's pretty much done if you're a good Master Yi player. He's like the ultimate 1v9 champ. He just does so much damage, and it's not only his damage, he's very hard to hit with stuff because he can go untargetable with his Alpha Strike. And that's just infuriating if you play something like Nami or Lulu or Sona or whatever. If the Yi's really good, he can Alpha Strike and get around a lot of these things. I've even had a E Alpha Strike when I was in the middle of casting Fear with Fiddlesticks, because Fear does have a small cast time to it, has a slight delay, and it cancels it. So Alpha Strike is very, very annoying. It gets around a lot of CC out there, so he's not quite as easy to CC as, you might think. And he's very fast, so he's already immune to slows whenever he uses his ult, so slows don't work. Cripples actually don't work too, fun fact, so don't ever try to get a Frozen Heart against Master Yi thinking that that's going to slow him down, because it's not. So yeah, slows don't work. He's extremely fast when this is going on. He can go untargetable with Alpha Strike, so he's very, very annoying to try to deal with, and, everyone's seen it before. Once he gets Blood Razor plus Blade the Ruined King, he's already kind of off to the races, really difficult to deal with. But then once he gets either Gensu's or Shojin or one other item off of that, he's pretty much unstoppable. And he just has so many resets. He has a ton of utility to him. He's one of the champions that can even solo Baron off of, sometimes even 2 items. I think I've seen him do it off of Blood Razor plus Blade the Ruined King, unless they nerfed that. But he can certainly do Barons and Dragons really quickly. He can split push. He can take towers really quickly. He can team fight. He can duel. There's very little that he can't do once he comes online. Now, he is awful in the early game, so you can punish that. If you're Kha'Zix, you can run over there and beat the crap out of him in his jungle, right? Or Zen Zhao, or pretty much anybody can run over there and deal with him in the early game. But if you just let him farm, if he manages to get a gank with red buff, his ganks are also pretty terrible because he doesn't have any CC. But if he ganks a lane that does have CC or he has red buff, gets a couple of kills, then he is very, very difficult to slow down. He's very difficult to stop, especially if you have something like a Morgana that can black shield him, or Lulu that can buff him up. There are a lot of champions that work really well with him that are in the meta right now. So yes, he is kind of a super selfish champion. He is very snowbally. Yes, he does get shut down in Challenger because people will invade and beat him up. People will take CC. People will focus fire him in fights. So there's just a lot more more intelligent, organized play. But when you start going to gold and lower or even platinum, people still just aren't drafting a lot of CC. They're not respecting him. They're not punishing him in his jungle. And he just gets to farm up a lot. And he's kind of the ultimate hyper carry. And a lot of that is because he does so much true damage off of his Wuju style. 35% of his bonus AD converts over to true damage. And when he's getting multiple hits off of this, off of his double strike plus Gensu's, which gives even more strikes. So he can even get quadra strikes sometimes off of this. It gets really disgusting very quickly. So, yeah, he just scales super well, kind of off to the races. I do think that Conquer is appropriate on him because he does get resets, and he is the type of champion where his cooldowns really don't matter that much outside of Alpha Strike. And so, you're able to keep up a very high level of sustained damage over a long period of time versus something like Rek'Sai, who is very cooldown dependent. She needs to have her bite. She needs to have her unburrow and stuff like that to take people down effectively. Yi does not, so Conqueror can be good. His double strike also allows you to stack Conqueror faster, and if you have Gensu's, that allows him to stack it faster. So I think that Conqueror is actually really good on Yi. And then Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then just Sudden Impact and Ravenous Hunter. And then you just want to go Berserker Greaves and Blood Razor, Blade the Ruined King. This is always the first 2 you want. After that, it's kind of up to you. Gensu's is the traditional build. Gives you a lot of extra procs of Blade the Ruined King. Gives you extra procs of your double strike. It just has a ton of synergy with the rest of your kit. Allows you to stack. If you have Gensu's, allows you to stack your Conqueror even faster. But Shojin is something that I've been seeing a lot more. It's hard to tell, and because no pros ever run Master Yi, hardly, except for that one meta last year where people were doing funnel comp with Yi and Taric middle, which got nerfed out really quickly. And that's kind of a booster strat still, where you have the Taric. But Shojin is interesting because it gives you 50% extra attack speed, and it allows your Alpha Strike to be up a lot more. So you're already getting all of these extra attacks. It's going to lower the cooldown of your Alpha Strike to 2 seconds or something. So you're just constantly going to be zipping around. So if a lot of people do have some CC and you want to be able to dodge that more with Alpha Strikes, then I think Shojin can be really good. And the 50% attack speed is obviously super strong on him. So, and the little bit of extra survivability could potentially be nice as well. So I think that I would probably say Gensu's most of the time is a little bit better, but I have seen some more people getting Shojin lately, and it is an interesting ability or thing for him just because you can Alpha Strike much more often. Gives you a lot more mobility and dodge potential if they do have CC. So yeah, Master Yi is still going to be very strong. If you're good on him, he deserves to be tier 1. It just, some of that is kind of dependent on your team both holding it together and not feeding super hard in all of your lanes, because you're not going to be able to gank for him much, and the enemy team not invading you and not taking a bunch of CC. So it's a little bit more conditional than some of the tier 1 picks, but, you know, if he gets to do his thing, I think he's the best jungler in the game, pretty much, if you're platinum and lower. So he's extremely risky. I just ban him out just because I don't want to deal with him. You know, just because you are basically rolling the dice. You're playing roulette, you know, whenever you let Master Yi through. If it's a good Master Yi player, like, you're counting on your team to, you know, shut him down. A lot of times that's a risky wager. But he's a very, very high risk, high reward champ, so I just put him down in tier 2, but he could be tier 1 if you're really good on him. Okay, Master Yi is another one that was hit on here really quickly. Most people are very familiar with Master Yi. He has a great early game. He falls off hard late game. A lot of Master Yi is how good are you at his kick mechanics. So if you can't reliably, you know, get behind the enemy and kick them into your team, then you're going to be completely worthless late game. So he does have a lot of tricks that he's very good at. He's extremely mobile. He's very good at ganks. He can come at people from really weird angles, kind of like Rek'Sai. He can get over walls. He can get around wards if you're a smart Yi. He does have some utility where he can shield allies and protect them a little bit. That kick, if you hit multiple people in a team fight, can do a ton of damage and can be a lot of CC. So he's extremely good in pro play right now. Very good in Challenger. He was the most pick banned jungle last week on 9.3. Now, he did have a he lost more games than he won, but he can still be pretty good in high-level play. He's just very risky, and he falls off hard late. So it's like, yeah, you can take over the game, but if you don't early, if you let that Karthus go late, you let that Jax go late, they're going to absolutely murder you. Okay, and if you let Kha'Zix get to 6 without punishing him too hard early, and he finds you and counter-ganks you or catches you out on your jungle, it's going to be a problem. So now you can kick him away. I think Lee's pretty good against Kha'Zix, but, you know, his first couple of items are very strong, right? When he goes, you know, Warrior and oftentimes Black Cleaver after that, he's very strong. But he starts falling off after that. So he can completely take over a game. He can be great, but you have to be good with him. You have to use a lot of momentum, and you have to be very intelligent about your ganks and, you know, potentially invading the enemy and punishing them if they are someone that you can punish. And Lee can punish a lot of people if he gets the first hit especially. So you just have to be, you know, on the ball, really paying attention, and constantly very proactive with Lee. You cannot be passive. You cannot go for kind of the farm game. Okay. Nocturne is another one that I think is rising up in priority quite a bit over the last few patches. It's actually getting banned out a decent amount in pro play, and I think he had a very good win rate. I think that's like 9-3 last week. And a lot of that is because some of these early game junglers, once again, are falling out, most notably Camille. And he is someone who is a power farm to 6 jungler. Although he can have some decent ganks. If he gets in there and tethers that fear on somebody, then they can definitely die with that. But he has great access to the backline. So it's like virtually guaranteed you're going to get on their AD carry. Like, you're going to have a chance to get on them and disrupt them. And if they don't have flash, you can easily kill them. And if it's somebody who's like split pushing in a side lane, or you have really good vision and you catch the support out trying to go ward somewhere where they shouldn't be, he's like one of the king of punishment, right? So if someone's out of position, if they're not respecting your ability to come in, he's fantastic. Counter ganking, you know, they think they're going to get a good gank on you. Nocturne comes flying in out of nowhere. And he just causes mass confusion too. Like, people just aren't really sure what to do. You know, the top laner's not sure where they should teleport for fights a lot of the time. People can't really see what's going on, where they should be going, if they should be rotating. So I think that makes him very strong, very versatile, very scary in team fights. He does do a ton of damage. He farms really well, too. With his passive, his Umbral Blades heals him for quite a bit. Does a little bit of AoE damage. Then his little Dusk Stalker thing does pretty good damage as well. I'm just going to start wearing a freaking hat to these things, or just like shaving my head or something. I don't know why my hair's not cooperating today, but anyways. So pre-6, he's okay. He's not that great. I think he does farm pretty well. He can't contest scuttles or anything like that like super well. I'm not entirely sure how well he duels against things like Kha'Zix and Lee. I imagine they can beat him pre-6, but if he does get the terror on him and he gets that Dust Blade, he can certainly do quite a bit of damage. But I would probably just go for the play around the ultimates, especially in solo queue. So Lethal Tempo is going to give you the ability to really throw down a ton of damage. in fights. So especially after you kill the primary target, just having that extra attack speed is really good, particularly if you get a little bit of healing somewhere in your build. Your passive is going to give you healing, but what I see a lot of people doing is just Warrior, Dustblade, and then Black Cleaver. So kind of your standard, like, you know, all-in champion early and then try to, like, transition to survive a little bit more, have a little bit more utility late game. You could also go GA if you want to second. Some people go Ravenous Hunter on him. I think Ultimate Hunter is worth considering just so you have even more ults because your ult is so high impact it almost guarantees a kill if you're using it correctly whenever it's off cooldown. And then Presence of Mind is very good as well. More ults, it's a good thing. And then you just want the Execute and Alacrity. So I think he can be very good. He's definitely a level 6 jungler, but he does get around wards very well. He's great at counter ganking, and he's very good at getting on those hyper carries on that backline. So if you're worried about that Jinx, you know, potentially ruining your day or the Kha'Zix or the Twitch or whatever, then Nocturne can definitely work. Now, you can also take Electrocute on him as well if you want. But most of the successful builds I've seen take Lethal Tempo. That's what a lot of the pros are doing, and that's because it gives you a little bit more sustained damage so that after you assassinate your primary target, you're still going to be able to do something, right? And so that's why, that's what I like. So virtually everybody's taking Lethal Tempo now. So yeah, you can go the Electrocute kind of one-shot build, but this is also going to one-shot people pretty much because once you get your fear on them and you're running at them full speed and you just hammer away on them with Lethal Tempo, then they're going to die. And this just gives you a bit more game after that so that you can potentially, you know, fight your way through some other people as well. So yeah, very strong champion right now, very underestimated. We're probably going to see a bit more of him in pro play. He could be as high as tier 1. You know, a lot of these, if you're really good on them, could definitely move up into tier 1. There are a lot of, like, very good junglers right now. I think Karthus and Nunu are kind of in their own sort of bracket, but the rest of the stuff is all pretty solid. Ivern, my personal favorite jungler. He's really fun to play. He's great. The thing about Ivern is that, like, he is kind of reliant on your team to be able to do some stuff for him. He can't really make a lot of plays by himself. Like, he can show up and try to gank, but his ganks are pretty lackluster. He definitely cannot duel anybody. If anyone ever invades and fights him, he's pretty screwed. So if they come over and start taking your stuff, you really have to be smart about your pathing with Ivern. You have to avoid the enemy almost at all costs. Definitely until you get to level 6. And then just constantly try to take their stuff. And you have to have the timing in your mind too, like where they're going to be and when they're going to be there. Because you have to wait on your passive before you can unlock the creatures, right? And so that's really tricky because you can't just walk over. I mean, usually you only want to invade if you have smite and save your smites for invades to go over there and just rob one of their camps. But you also want to predict where they're going to be because if you spend, you know, 3 of your charges, which cost you a lot of health and mana, on some of your camps down on bot side, for example, and they're on bot side and they invade you, well, they're going to take all of your camps now that you just tagged, and you just lost a lot of health and mana and time by tagging those monsters. When if you had sort of better awareness about their pathing, then you wouldn't have even tagged those camps. You would have just immediately gone to the other side of the jungle. So he's deceptively hard to play in that, you know, once again, you just can't really ever fight anybody. So you have to have a very good sense of pathing and sort of planning on how you're going to get your camps. But he does scale extremely well, as all enchanters do. He has a very good shield. He has pretty good CC with Daisy plus Q. Plus the shield adds in an extra slow, especially if you don't have an enchanter. Now, this is one kind of knock on Ivern, is if you have an enchanter already on your team, he loses a lot of his effectiveness because he wants to rush redemption, and many enchanters will also want redemption. You know, he's going to want Ardent Censer probably somewhere in his build. Other enchanters are going to want Ardent Censer in their build. So, you know, especially the redemption thing can be a little awkward with double redemption, and you don't have any damage, right? And the enchanter support is not going to have any damage either. So you're very heavily relying on that 80 carry not to be a total turkey, right? Or at least to have super high scaling in your other lanes. Because if you have something like a Psy on top, Ivern in the jungle, Orianna mid, you know, Janna in the bot lane, you don't have any damage unless your 80 carry completely takes over the game. So that can be a liability composition-wise if you run Ivern. But if you have something like a, you know, a Leona bot lane who can already start fights with you and is not going to overlap on your items, then that's great. If you have a Leona or an Alistar or a Thresh or something like that, then Ivern gets a lot better because Now you're going to have another playmaker on your team to kind of make up for your lackluster playmaking. Or if you have like a Zyra or something that can do a lot of damage to make up for your damage. So he is very good in the right kind of comp, but pairing him with an enchanter can be dangerous because that's going to be two roles that aren't really doing that much damage and that don't really have that much engage usually. So great utility, but that could be a problem potentially. So he's very good in the right circumstance. I see him fail a lot in solo queue in my games. I love him. He's my favorite jungler, but I'm just being real here. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I possibly can. And the reality is, you know, just like I said before, he can get punked, you know, if they invade him or if you just don't have the right team comp. He does have a high win rate, though. He does have a 53% win rate, so he is doing some work. He is very good. You might even see him some more in pro play. I don't think we saw him that. We saw him a little bit. Looks like he probably was like 3-2 or something last week, but overall, I think he can be strong. So you just want to go Guardian, Font of Life, Bone Plating, Revitalize. And then I like Biscuit and Cosmic Insight. This helps you out with your health and your mana on your first couple of clears. He really needs that. And Cosmic is very good because he's going to get some item actives. You know, a lot of times he's going to get at least Redemption, and he might get Locket as well. So that's really handy. And then you get your standard, you know, cooldown to your, or the extra 5% cooldown reduction and the extra reduction on your summoners. So I think he can be very good. You want to go Redemption early because you need the mana regen, you need the health regen, so that's super useful. Athene's is almost always what you want next, and then after that, it's kind of up to you. You could get Locket, you could get Ardent, you could get Knight's Vow. You just kind of have to read the situation and figure out what works best for you. But he is very strong. I will say he has a terrible matchup against Nunu, though. So be very careful with that. And the main reason for that is Nunu can eat Daisy. Okay, so if Daisy tries to walk up to Nunu and he chomps it with his Q and then smites it, he can chomp and smite it. She's dead virtually instantly. Okay, so it feels real bad when that happens. That's happened to me when I've played Ivern. Because Daisy is so much of your kit. Like, she provides so much of your CC, so much of your frontline disruption and tankiness that it's just really, really rough against people that do a lot of damage to Daisy. So junglers can always smite her, but Nunu can chomp and smite her. Anyone else that can do, like, isolation damage to her, like Kha'Zix, if Kha'Zix gets her alone, he can kill her almost instantly. So that can be very rough, so be very, very careful. And then Nunu also can come in and take your camps really quickly and really easily after you've already, you know, tagged him. And Nunu loves to invade, and he knows you're not going to be able to fight him back. So Nunu just ruins your day if you want to play Ivern. So just be very, very careful with that. And he's going to have a lot of utility too, so he's going to be able to match you in terms of late game utility and scaling. So you're going to have a real bad time. So just be extremely cautious if they already have locked in Nunu if you want to do Ivern. Okay, then moving into Tier 3 here. This will be the last little bit. We've got to make this, you know, finish this up. There are a lot of good junglers that I wasn't able to mention too in this list, by the way. I mean, Zen, Elise, Evelynn, Rengar, those can all be good. I'm a big skeptic of Hecarim. A lot of people are talking him up, how he's going to be good on this patch. He can be. The problem is his itemization is so weird. Like, he has to get Cinderhulk early, and then he goes Trinity Force next. And, like, there's very little health on Trinity Force, so you're not getting a lot of value out of the Cinderhulk passive, the 15% there. And so he ends up, like, being very squishy for a lot of the game while he's building up to his Trinity Force. So he does do a lot of damage. He has excellent ganking. He can definitely get on that back line, but he's surprisingly squishy early in the game. Now, once he gets to 3 or 4 items, once he gets the Spirit Visage or the Dead Man's Plate to go with that Trinity and Cinderhulk, then he starts taking off and getting very strong. But I feel like he's pretty good early in the game because he has very good ganks. He has really high base damages, but it's that mid-game, right, when other people are completing Warrior and you're completing Cinderhulk, when I feel like he starts to fall off a little bit. So he's kind of like a Caitlyn, where he's very good early, but you have to abuse him early. You have to get a lot of really good ganks, and you have to exert a ton of map pressure to pull him through that mid-game and get him into the late game ASAP, kind of like Caitlyn, right, where you have to pressure the lane, get tons of advantages, and then just try to, like, sail right through your weak point in the mid-game. I think of Hecarim as kind of like Caitlyn 2.0 in the jungle. It's kind of weird, but that's the analogy that I think of in terms of, like, his scaling graph. But yeah, so he's okay, but I just feel like there are less risky, better picks overall. Rammus can be very strong against some of these, like, heavy AD champs, so against things like Master Yi, Nocturne, Lee, Jax, you know, Kha'Zix. He can be very good. He's got a lot of great early game pressure. He actually farms pretty well. His objective control is kind of shoddy. You know, in terms of taking dragons and barons. He does take towers very quickly, though. Don't forget that his passive does apply to towers. So if you take Demolish and you gank a lane, even if you do a ton of damage and they have to flash out, or even if you just run up to a lane where they just backed and someone's pushing in, you can just roll up, Demolish, pop your ult, and just grab a ton of plates off of that. So he's very, very good at demolishing unattended towers. So that gives him a nice little bit of utility. You know, there's just a lot of counterplay to him. Anyone that can knock him out of his ball is going to be rough. So, like, Soraka can silence him out of it. Nami can wave him or bubble him out of it. Draven can use stand aside to knock him out of it. Vayne can condemn him out of it. Tristana can buster shot him out of it. Caitlyn can potentially lay down a trap and maybe maneuver around it. So there's a lot of stuff that can knock him out of a power ball gank unless you get a really good flank. So there's some stuff that can't. But you have to be very careful, and you have to outplay a lot of the CC that's coming your way. But, yeah, he can be really good as a counter pick. Shyvana's one that I do want to talk about just for 1 second here while we have some time, because it's kind of weird, and this is sort of a troll all-capser. But this is what a lot of people are doing. And you guys, you know I wouldn't tell you this if I didn't think that it had some potential. I have seen this in my game before, AP Shyvana. Okay, I know it was kind of a meme last year when they put the AP ratio on it, but I think people are figuring out some pretty good builds. She's got a respectable win rate. I think it's like 51, 52%, something like that. Yeah, she's up there, 53%, and this is the build that she goes. Okay, so this is not like entirely like super troll. But the reason that this works, is because of her E does so much damage. You would not believe the damage. I couldn't believe it. When this was in my game, this was probably like maybe a month ago or something, I saw this, and I was like, how the hell are we losing to an AP Shyvana? What is wrong with these people on my team? Because she was getting really fed. She's like 5-0 before I ran into her. And I was like, oh my god. She hit me with this Flame Breath, like the dragon-based Flame Breath, and I was just like, holy crap. It's got like a 70% AP ratio, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it ends up being on like a fairly low cooldown. It's really quick and it's long range. Has 220 base, 70% ratio, and then it does like this dot damage over time, and she also does 3% of your maximum health whenever she attacks you. And then her ultimate has a 1.0 AP ratio on it as well. So that actually does a ton of damage. If you have like 200 AP, you're going to be like diving into them. And this can AoE hit a lot of people too, and it's pretty long range, you know, for 850 damage. So you basically dive in their face with this Dragon's Descent and then just fireball them and then just spike them out with your Q. And it does like just a ton of damage. Like, I don't know what it is. Like this number, it just feels like it's way, way more than that. Oh, this is the empowered damage. So it does empowered damage when you're in dragon form. Okay, so it turns into 100% AP. Then it adds on this extra, you know, 125 plus this. That's like 325 with a 100% ratio. I mean, it was hitting me for like 900 damage or something when she just had a couple of items. So it does a lot of damage. She does get a little bit of extra bonus health. She does get some resistances if she takes down dragons. She does extra damage to dragons. So she's okay, but the main thing is she can just do a ton of burst damage, and she can get on that backline because she's unstoppable while she's ulting. So Thresh can't flay you back. You know, Nami can't stop you with her wave. She's just diving right to that backline, just like a Hecarim ult. And she's going to be deleting people. Now, she could be kind of a little squishy with this build, but she has really high base health. She starts off with 600 health. And then when she goes into Dragon, she gets extra health as well. So it seems like a troll build, but I swear, like, it actually can work. It can do a lot of burst damage. So you just go Runic Echoes. Now, she power farms extremely well, too. So if you take Ravenous Hunter, then you're going to be pretty well sustained when you're in the jungle. And, like, maxing out this E does AoE damage to minions as well. So you just stack up all the Raptors, Flame Breath them, then Burn Out, and you're just going to tear through them really, really quickly, especially with this AP build. That adds on even more burst. I think they took away the move speed on it. They did. So the mana is kind of worthless, but it does add on good burst. And then you get the Spell Pin, and then the Nashor's Tooth. Any champion that can really abuse Nashor's Tooth is going to be great, because it's an awesome bargain. It's just most people can't, like, find a way to use this item. Except for, like, Azir. So there are some champs that can abuse this, but There aren't that many. But she is definitely one of them. So it's a pretty cheap item overall. It's only 3,000 gold. I think they may have increased like the cost. Actually, they haven't touched it in years. I thought it was like 2,800, but maybe I'm like living way in the past. But either way, like it's very, very good. By itself, it's 140% efficient, which is a great buy. It gives you a nice early power spike. And then the extra cooldown reduction is going to give you more flame breaths, more burnouts, a lot of really good stuff there. And then the more you have your abilities up, the faster you're going to charge up your dragon power. Gives you a ton of ability power, a lot of attack speed, and some on-hit damage. So very, very good ability on her. So, yeah, it's kind of a troll build. It's kind of weird, you know, but I think that it definitely can work. And then Death Cap, of course, is crazy. But then you can also get some utility stuff if you need to. So you can get something like Frozen Mallet to give you some extra health, to give you some extra, you know, stickiness. Or you can go something like Spirit Visage or Adaptive Helm or something like that. So you can kind of measure up how much damage your team needs, but I think maxing out Flame Breath and starting off AP and then, you know, dialing it back a little bit if you want should be fine. So one of the major problems with Shyvana historically, like a lot of other of these bruisery type of champions, is they can get kited, right? So if they don't do a lot of damage right away, then everyone else is just going to kite them. But now you can just jump right in the face of that back line and just one-shot them pretty much with your E. You hit them with the dragon, you hit them with the E, it's going to be like 1,500 to 2,000 damage. And then you can run them down with Burnout to finish them off. So I think that's how she deals with it. And that's sort of an evolution that people have come up with after they buffed her AP ratios and after they made her ult unstoppable. Then she's going to get to that backline. She's going to do massive damage. So it's kind of similar to a Nocturne. Like, you can see her coming most of the time. She's not going to be as far away as Nocturne. But she's going to do as much or potentially even more burst damage than Nocturne is. And she's going to be able to turn around and fight people because she's got a lot of extra bonus health. Just think of her kind of like an AP Nocturne sort of 2.0 is the way to think of it. Except, you know, once again, maybe higher burst damage that's also AP, less sneakiness about her than Nocturne, but potentially more tanky. So I think that's something that people are experimenting with. I don't think we'll see it in pro play, but I think it could be a pretty good solo queue special. I've personally seen it completely 1v9 my team before, and I had no clue, like, what the hell was going on. But apparently that's something that more and more people are trying. So try it out at your peril. It is a little on the all capsy side, but I think it could be actually a pretty legit one. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of my special super secret off meta pick that I think can actually work. And then Shaco, Graves, and Kayn can all be good for their own reasons, but we need to stop because we're at an hour and a half. You know, if you're a Shaco one trick, look, you can make Shaco work. I think that the nerf to Tiamat definitely hurt him. He's going Duskblade Trinity, but that's a much slower build over time. But if you do take over the game early as Shaco, he can work. I just feel like Kha'Zix is probably going to be a little better. Although Shaco does split push really well with his clone later, he can take dragons really quickly and barons really quickly with his clone. So Shaco is still really good. He still has a high win rate. I just think that he's kind of only for specialists at this point. But he is still... Shaco's always good. I mean, he was on my one-trick video. There's just always a way you can build him. There's always a way you can take over early with him because he is so versatile in terms of his builds, because of how his kit works. So he can still be pretty good. Graves, I think, should come back a lot more. I don't know really why he hasn't. Graves and Shaco could definitely be tier 2 or maybe even tier 1. They're, you know, they're in the ballpark of being able to get in there. I do like a build that I've been seeing on Graves lately with Halo Blades. So this has kind of been the new hotness with a lot of people. And the major reason for this, I think, is it gives you a faster reload. So one major thing with Graves is if you don't kill him in your first volley, you're going to have to reload. And that feels really bad. But now you can, you know, run up, auto attack. It'll trigger Halo Blades, dash, auto attack again. That'll give you 1 bullet back. And because the dash counts as an auto attack reset, then you get an extra attack off of Halo Blades. So you get first attack is 1 charge of Halo Blades, dash, you get a second attack, which doesn't count towards your Halo Blades, and then you get 2 more attacks. And then you're, or like attack, dash, attack, attack. Then you're going to be out of ammo, but you're going to have 1 stack of Halo Blades left. Is the key thing. And since you have 1 stack of hail left, that means you're going to refresh your auto attack. You're going to get your shells back much, much, much faster, because part of when you get your shells back is based on your attack speed. Now, I don't know the exact formula for that, and it doesn't disclose it on the wiki, But the fact that you can do that combo, attack, dash, attack, attack, and still have one charge left for the fast reload, I think is really useful. So with the time being reduced per level and by his attack speed. So I don't, once again, I don't know exactly how much faster that is, but it's fast enough to where a lot of people are running it, and I think that's why. So I think that's a new hotness on him. Some people have been skipping the Black Cleaver. I wouldn't go that far, but some people are skipping it, just going straight to Warrior Infinity Edge. X-Smithy's been doing that. That can be very effective. I still think a lot of people are going for the Cleaver, the Warrior Cleaver build. Cleaver is so good on Graves, if you didn't know this, because when he attacks, each one of those bullets applies Cleaver. Okay, so when he attacks and 4 bullets go into them, if you attack him point blank, then that's 4 stacks of Black Cleaver instantly. So that's why people get Black Cleaver so early on Graves. When a lot of other these type of champions, you know, they'll go Warrior plus one other damage item and then get Black Cleaver. I think it's very good on him for those reasons. So I would still probably err on the side of going Black Cleaver early. That seems to be what a lot of people are doing, but there are more and more people just going for this crit build, just going Warrior, Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, and just blowing them up and not even worrying about being tanky. So it might depend on how well you're doing in the game. If you're just completely murdering everybody, maybe you just skip Cleaver and just go straight to Infinity Edge. It's kind of up to you. Whenever he crits, it throws out 6 bullets and does a lot of extra damage. So you get 6 bullets in a wider cone, and then each one of those bullets is going to do an extra 50% physical damage with Infinity Edge. So that's a lot. So you can hit him with up to 6 of these. So the 6 is 50%, and then this right here is going to do another 50%. So it's a lot of damage. It's definitely moving into one-shot territory. So I think we could start seeing more Graves. I don't think we saw him a lot in pro play in the last patch, but we might be able to see him more coming up soon, especially after the Camille has kind of fallen off the earth as far as a jungler goes. But anyways, and then Kayn can be good. Always go red Kayn if you want to go Kayn. I mean, I guess if you're like super hardcore taking over the game, you can go blue, and they have a lot of squishies, but usually red Kayn's better. He's just kind of a nice little bruiser champ, you know, has a lot of healing, has a lot of damage. He can work. He does have nice gank paths. I don't know. He could be higher, but I just think he's all right. He's okay. He can take over games, but I think he's a little on the risky side potentially. But he's okay, especially in a world where there's going to be all kinds of enchanters throwing out shields and heals and all that stuff. It's going to be a lot harder to burst people down as Red Kayn, and I just don't think he's going to have as much utility as some of these other champs on the list. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did. Stay tuned for the rest of the tier lists that are going to be coming out over this patch and in future patches. Come stop by the stream sometime. It's a great time, and I'll see you next time.